Hello, welcome to Job Applications, Cover Letters, and Thank You Notes. I'm Susan, and I will be facilitating this workshop with you today. The objectives for this workshop are to help you understand the importance of job applications, cover letters, and thank you notes. We want you to learn some strategies to complete the applications, how to effectively write a cover letter and a thank you note, and also identify materials that you need to complete online applications, write your cover letters, and your thank you notes. A lot of people wonder why you need to fill out a job application and submit a resume. And the answer is because an application is an official document. It might be required by HR and it covers your career and your educational history. It's also a written statement of the qualifications for the job you are seeking. And sometimes they look very simple and sometimes they look very difficult. That's why we want you to have some tips and tricks to fill them out effectively. Employers use a variety of job applications for a variety of reasons. Again, it is an official document that might be required by the HR department, but it may also be used for different reasons, such as for the employer to organize information in a specific order. So why a job application? Again, they're used for different purposes. Sometimes they are used to screen you and again to organize the information that they want to know about the applicants in a specific order and to compare and filter applicants. When they are being used to filter applicants, you want your application to look good, to be accurate, to have complete information and proper spelling throughout. Let's talk about some of the information that you're going to need when you're filling out your job application. You're going to need your personal information, your educational information, the certificates, diplomas, degrees, licenses that you've completed, the name of the position that you are looking to fill, and your previous employment information. So let's start with that personal information. Your name, your address, phone number, and email address. You want to make sure that you're using your full name. So if your name is Robert and you typically go by Rob or Bob, you still want to put Robert on your application. Your telephone number should be the main number that you use for people to reach you. And your email address should be a professional sounding email address. If you have not yet already created an email specifically to be used for your job search, now is a good time to do that. You want to make sure that you have all the information about your previous schooling, your certificates, diplomas, and degrees that you have earned, when you graduated, and any special training that you might have completed. When you are writing down the name of the position desired, make sure that you write it down accurately. Make sure you have the correct title and spelling of everything. And then in your previous employment, make sure that you have the names of your previous employers and the dates of your previous employment. Some applications will ask you for date, month, and year. You may not exactly remember the actual start date or stop date, depending on how long ago your previous position was held. So you might need to do a little bit of research before you fill that in. Let's go back to personal information for a minute. You're often going to be asked for your birth date, your social security number, and whether or not you have a criminal history. So if you don't know your social security number off the top of your head, make sure you have that information handy as well. Some typical questions on a job application include the reasons for leaving, your references, your military experience, and your personal experience. In addressing your reasons for leaving, you want to keep it positive. No matter the reason for leaving, you want to be able to frame your answer in a positive light. The application may request the names of your previous supervisor or the company name and address so that they can contact human resources to verify your employment. Again, no matter your reason for leaving, find a way to frame it in a positive manner on your application. Your references should include approximately 3 to 5 people who can speak to your professional abilities and your personal qualities. You need to ask these individuals and get their permission before you use them as a reference so that they're aware and they are waiting for that call or email about you. You want to make sure that you have updated contact information for your references, both email and phone numbers. And for your professional references, make sure that you have updated titles for these individuals. Your personal references should not include immediate family members. If you've served in the military, be ready to list your years of service, where you served, and your titles. And if you have any personal experience that's relevant to the job information, or excuse me, to the job position, that would be helpful information to include as well. You want to give your full name, your phone number, and your email. Again, making sure that you're using your primary phone number and a professional email. You want to answer every question honestly and always keep that information positive. If you're negative in your application, that can be used to screen you out of the filtering process and could potentially cost you the job. Before you submit that application, review it. Review it, review it. Read it forwards, read it backwards, looking for spelling and grammar errors, making sure that you have filled out all the fields. Even things that maybe aren't required. If you don't fill out fields that aren't required, if you skip all the non-required fields, that may give the impression that you're just looking to do the least amount of work as possible. You want to make sure that you are following the directions exactly. Are they asking you to submit it electronically? Are you supposed to email it? Are you supposed to upload it? Are you supposed to submit in person? Follow those directions. An employer wants to know that you are able to follow directions. They want to see the demonstration of somebody who's going to follow the rules. Pay attention to any of those special directions, and if you're not sure of something, it is okay to contact HR and ask questions. Applicant tracking systems, or ATSs, are electronic systems used by employers to keep track and filter applicants for a specific position or the multiple positions open within their company. They initially scan your resume for keywords and then they rank resumes by relevance. The relevance is determined by comparing the keyword match used in your resume with those in the job description that's loaded into its database. So it helps companies manage all those incoming resumes with the applicants and how they match up to what's required in the job. What an ATS is looking for is typically about an 80% match in keywords. They're looking for that relevance in your experience. According to job search service providers, applicant tracking systems destroy about 75% of candidates' chances of landing an interview as soon as they submit their resumes because of poor keyword matching or improper formatting. If you don't have the right formatting, keywords, or phrases, the ATS can misread it and rank your resume as a bad match with the job opening, regardless of your qualifications. Let's talk about some tips for your online applications. It's a good idea to save an electronic copy or print a copy of the job description for positions that you have applied for and keep it in your records. That way you have a record of what specific positions you have applied for. When an employer calls you, you can reference those details on that specific position. You want to keep an ongoing list of the positions that you have applied for. When you have applied to them as well is helpful to include. You want to be able to review all the information that you put on an application before you submit it. Avoid simple mistakes, avoid overlooking missed areas that need to be filled in. Be prepared when you are filling out an online application to also answer some assessment questions. Take a personality test or perhaps also a skill assessment. These tools are used by employers to further filter their candidate pool and align the right person in the right position. You want to keep a record of all usernames and passwords for your different accounts for the positions to which you have applied. Some people opt to keep a spreadsheet that has the name and date that they applied for a specific position, as well as their username and password. Some people keep a folder with the name of the company and a copy of the job description and the application and the questions and answers that you provided. These are all helpful tools that you can use when then referring to that specific job when you are called for an interview. Some more tips for online applications. They can take a long time. So you want to make sure that you're allowing at least an hour to complete the application. And keep in mind that that's the minimum amount of time that you want to set aside. You don't want to feel rushed. You don't want to add to the stress of the process. So make sure you've given yourself enough time. Again, keep a copy of your resume electronically, a copy of your cover letter, and your references also should be kept electronically. That way you can upload them when you are filling out that job application. And if you're given the option to upload your resume, always opt to upload it if that option is available to you. Keep your answers short. You want to make sure that you are short and concise. Think about like when you are in an interview and you're using perhaps the STAR format to answer a question. You want to give the details that are required and only what is being asked of you. You might want to create a Word document that has some of your common responses so that you can cut and paste. But again, if you're going to do that, make sure before you submit that application that you have reviewed all the information that you've entered, because you don't want any mistakes or missed questions or misspelled words. Maybe when you copied from that document, you missed the period at the end of a sentence, or you missed the first letter of a word. So even if you keep a document with your common responses, still double check your application before submitting. If you are going to submit your application in person, there are some important points to remember. Some industries do still accept in-person applications, and so if you're going to be dropping off an application, make sure that you're dressed neatly and professionally. That first impression is a big deal, and you want to make sure that you are giving yourself the opportunity to shine in that environment. It's not a great time to drop off a resume if you're in the middle of running errands or you're on your way home from the gym. Again, you want to be dressed neatly and professionally and allow that first impression to be a great one. You want to bring several copies of your resume, your cover letter, and your references, because you never know who you're going to meet in the midst of dropping off this application, and better to be prepared with those items if needed. Be ready to share your elevator pitch, your little commercial about why you're the best person for the job. You want to make that great impression by being prepared and not tripping over your words. And you also want to make sure that everyone you meet is given a warm smile, that you're giving eye contact, and you're acting and interacting in a professional manner. You never know if who you're meeting is the person who is going to make the hiring decision. Writing your cover letter is something that many people can feel a little bit overwhelmed with. Your cover letter is a document that you send along with your resume to provide some additional information about your skills and about your experience. Sometimes it's considered as a writing example. This letter is to give some information about why you're skilled and qualified for the job that you're applying for. And it typically accompanies every resume and application that you send out. You do want to make sure that you are covering one thing that sets you apart from other applicants. Why are you the best fit for the job? Um, Even if it's not a requirement, it's still recommended that you include one with your application. You don't want to go on and on in a cover letter. It should be short, no more than 1 page in length. It is going to provide that employer with some details about your skill set and your qualifications and how they relate to the job that you are applying for. So what's the difference between a cover letter and a resume? Well, a cover letter should complement but not duplicate your resume. The purpose of it is to interpret some data or facts on your resume and add a little bit of a personal touch. It's often your earliest written contact with a potential employer and creates that first impression. How do you prepare to write your cover letter? Well, your cover letter is used to explain the reasons for your interest in a specific company or position and to identify your skill sets and experiences that are most relevant and applicable to the position. So the first step you should take is to carefully read that job description, evaluate the skills that are required, and see if they match your own skill set. You want to research that company thoroughly so that you understand the background of the company and how you may fit in that. A cover letter should begin with both yours and the employer's contact information, your name, your address, your phone number, and your email, followed by the date. If you're sending your cover letter in an email format rather than an actual letter, your contact information is going to go at the end of the letter after your signature. It is important that you begin your cover letter salutation with either Dr., Mr., Ms., last name. And it's always better to address a cover letter to a specific person if you can. It's appropriate to contact HR to get the name if it's not listed in the job description. Make sure that you have the correct spelling. You can also look this information up on LinkedIn or Google. It is possible to find this information out many times by looking on LinkedIn or Googling that information. If you've done your best and you still don't know the employer's actual name, it's appropriate to write Dear Hiring Manager or Human Resources. Let's move on to the body of your cover letter. In that first paragraph, you're going to state the position that you're applying for, making sure that you spell it correctly and you word it correctly. Talk about where you found it, why you're interested in the position. And this is important. If you have a contact, somebody who told you about the job or you know someone who works in that company, this is the paragraph where you want to include that name. In the second paragraph, you're going to talk about your skills, your experiences, your education, and how these things align with the job that you are applying for. In your third and closing paragraph, say that you would like the opportunity to interview. Talk more about the position and the employment opportunities at that company. Make it clear what you will do to follow up when you plan to do it, and always thank the employer for his or her consideration of your skills. In the signature, you want to handwrite your signature followed by the typed name. If this is an email, it is appropriate to simply include your typed name followed by your contact information. Let's take a look at an example of a cover letter. So up here we have the heading, and it looks a lot like the heading on your resume. It includes your name, remember your full name, not Bob, but Robert, if that's your name. And then your address, your phone number, and your professional email. And notice that you don't have to label these things. You don't have to label phone, you don't have to label email. It's self-evident. Then you're going to have the date, and then the name and contact information of the person that you're contacting, and then your salutation that specifically addresses the person that you are emailing. In this example, it's Dear Mr. Hatcher. The first paragraph is going to talk about your interest in a specific position and where you found that information. You want to talk about how your experiences and your skills make you the best person for the job. And then you want to wrap it all up, thank the person for their time, talk about how you're going to follow up the letter, and then sign it. It's important to edit and proof your cover letter before you send it. Read it forwards, read it backwards, ask somebody to look at it for you. Often we get so used to looking at it that we sometimes miss things that are right in front of our faces. Did you catch this? Did you see it? I didn't see it the first time I saw this slide because we're so used to looking at a sign like this that we read what we think should be there and not always what is there. So you want to make sure that you have the correct employer and company names when you're writing multiple cover letters at once. It's easy to make a mistake if you're copying and pasting as well. Read that letter out loud. Read it forwards, read it backwards. Look for small errors or misspelled words or words that are spelled correctly but are the wrong usage of the word. Think about the word to or the word there. You could be spelling a word correctly, but it could be the wrong form of the word for that usage. Always double check spelling of the contact's name and the company name. Your cover letter is a first impression, so you want to make sure that you are making a great first impression. So congratulations, your great cover letter and resume and application have landed you that interview. Before you leave an interview, make sure that you ask the question about timeline for the decision-making process. When does that employer hope to make a decision about filling this position? Make sure you get a business card from everyone in your interview so that you can send a thank you. You know where to send it. You know how to appropriately spell everyone's names. You have their contact information. Make it a point to personalize each thank you note. While you're interviewing, maybe you want to jot down something specific to each interviewer so that you can refer back to that in your thank you note. You do want to write that thank you note and follow up within 24 hours of meeting. So typically that's going to be with an email. but it really is okay to send a handwritten one as a follow-up to that as well. Make sure that everybody who was included in your interview gets a few lines of thank you. Even if you feel like their role was insignificant, if they played a role in interviewing you, it's appropriate to thank them for their time and effort. It's going to make you look well-mannered, and it's going to set you apart and keep you at the forefront of the interviewer's minds in a good way. This is meant to be a brief note, professionally written. It's not about going back over all your qualifications and everything that was mentioned in the interview. You already had a chance to let that shine. Again, this is for you to just thank them for the interview, reiterate why you're a good fit, and then close with expression of anticipating your next step. So there are different ways to send a thank you note. Most thank you notes these days are sent by email, and that is appropriate. You want to leave that to field empty until you've completed, spell checked, and proofread your email message. If you have time, forward that message to a friend or a family member to proofread for you. You want to use short paragraphs to make sure that your message is easy to read and comprehend. Maybe someone is just looking at it on a mobile device. You want to make it easy for them to see it. If something that you said seemed to resonate with your interviewer, make reference to that. If you connected with the interviewer about something of interest, insert a reference to that connection in your thank you note. Help the interviewer remember you. Snail mail. So, we don't use this as often, but it is definitely still appropriate to send a thank you by snail mail. Um, Recent surveys by CareerBuilder and Account Temps have indicated that an emailed thank you note is acceptable to most employers. But if you've interviewed with a really conservative organization, you probably want to consider sending a formal thank you note in an envelope with a stamp as well. And just like in formal written and printed notes, include a unique message to each person who interviewed you because they're often passed around to others who interviewed you, and you don't want your message to be the same to each person. Remember to keep these messages short. A handwritten note is also an acceptable way to say thank you for taking the time to interview me. You want to make sure that you're keeping your message positive, that you're using neat handwriting. You want to remind the interviewer of your conversation, how you enjoyed it, and say how you're looking forward to hearing back from them. It is really helpful if you're going to write a handwritten note that you write it out first on a scrap piece of paper. That way you can spell check, you can ensure that everything looks good proportionally and that you don't forget anything. Some people do a combination of these methods. They email that note immediately and then they follow up either with that snail mail letter or handwritten note. When should you follow up after you send your thank you note? Well, a good rule of thumb is to follow up with a phone call 1 week later or sooner if when you ask the question about how long they think it would be until they make a decision would indicate that you would need to follow up sooner than that. If you don't hear anything, then perhaps it's time to move on. Remember that no can just mean next opportunity. If you do hear from an interviewer and the news is not what you intended, what do? Well, first you still want to thank the person for letting you know, and then ask if the interviewer would be willing to give you any feedback that you could use for future interviews. Often they're going to tell you no, but it does show that you're interested in improving yourself. You want to keep networking with the employer. Maybe forward an occasional well-chosen article related to the industry or by joining a group in LinkedIn. Maybe you didn't get this position, but you did obtain an opportunity to grow your network. There are handouts that accompany this specific workshop, a copy of the PowerPoint, a sample thank you letter, some cover letter guidelines, a sample cover letter, and then a survey evaluation is included by link in the description underneath this virtual workshop. If you could please click that link and complete that short virtual survey, we would appreciate it. I thank you very much for your time and effort today. And if you have any questions, you can email me at scazillo@jobs4lancaster.com. I'll include that email address also in the description of this workshop. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. I look forward to hearing from you.